What is going on, everybody? We're here, back with a brand new episode of Higurashi When They Cry. Last time on, a lot, and I do mean a lot of stuff happened. Basically, last time what happened is we learned a bit more about the disease that's been affecting Sadako, and that it is in fact called the Himzawan syndrome, which is a type of mental disease that heightens your suspicion of other people and makes you more likely to persecute against them. That drives people to even murder other people, as we've seen numerous times throughout the previous chapters. At night, Sadako and Rika made a daring escape, and the other club members decided to help him out fight against the Mound Dogs and Takano. But unfortunately, they were unable to succeed, and they were all brutally killed. And oh boy, was that a scene? And the whole how Rika decided not to be and pass out before she was tortured to death by Takano, in order to remember Takano's face, in order to remember who is the true mastermind behind pretty much everything within Hinazawa. And we had a very poignant scene, is the best word to describe it, of all the spirits of the club members going into the afterlife, or something along those lines, and them comforting Hanyu and saying that Hanyu was one of the only people that didn't believe in the miracle of which they could overcome this cycle of fate. After that, we had a scene of what truly happens during the volcanic explosion at Himizawa, which is that the Mound Dogs, along with the, government, kill every person within Himizawa in a very, very horrifying scene. Best word to describe it. As Takano sings to herself in delight and propels herself to being a god, a woman who is forever sealed within history books. Even though the world may not know it, she herself can revel in this victory as being the one that became God, that truly created a curse of Himizawa via spreading the Himizawan syndrome to the rest of Japan. Now, God, okay. Before I discuss my thoughts on the on this whole chapter, I want to do the tip in the staff room first. But I want to talk about some discoveries I found. I reread Manual 34, and it cleared up a lot of things, such as why Kechi got beat up by two random guys at the end of chapter 1. Well, it's because he went to the quarry, which holds the equipment for Manual 34, which is why those two guys were guards and beat him up, and so Rena sent him on his way. Another thing that I figured out is that the syringe that Rika had during chapter 5 and chapter 6, really, was in order to inject Shion and Rena, was in order to cure them, not really cure them, but more like, what's the word? Suppress their L5 effects, since, both Shion and Rena were going through those L5 symptoms during their respective chapters. Now, what made me very, very confused is that Rika was injected by the vaccine, or just call it vaccine, by Shion, but it still made her crawl out of her throat. And I remembered that in the ending scene of last episode, it also mentions that if the vaccine is used on a healthy body, it shows a bunch of symptoms of the Hemizawa syndrome. But that made me confused since Rika is supposed to be the queen body. So I'm guessing is that I'm just going to guess here. I could be totally wrong. Please correct me if I am. What I'm guessing here is the queen carrier is pretty much healthy from the outside, even though she is the queen carrier of the Himmenzaun syndrome. She doesn't show any effects of the Himmenzaun syndrome. She doesn't. Well, from what we've seen, she doesn't really suspect of people. Actually, she does like the opposite. She trusts a lot of people. I mean, heck, last episode she believed in both Ire and Takano. So it's the opposite. So I'm going to guess the reason why she showed the effects of the L5 symptoms is that she technically has a healthy body and all that. What was one other thing? There was another thing. Let me check real quick. Let me see. That's why you write down notes before you start a new episode. Okay. Another thing I took note of is that what it really was pretty much like shown to us last episode is that pretty much any time that Rika dies, it destroys the village. Like no matter what, right? Via two ways. Either the government steps in and covers it up and pretty much murders everyone, or two, everyone goes crazy, right? And all that. And I remember reading a comment somewhere of how, like, it's very interesting how in both Chapter 2 and Chapter 5, Rika was dead for, like, what, 2 days? 2 days or something along those lines? And that not everybody went crazy instantly, which is, you know, something interesting to take note of. It's not like instant that everyone goes crazy and starts, you know, murdering each other and all that, which is something to take note of. But my point is, the entity that's creating these fragments, that's creating this loop, isn't it just doing it for Rika herself? When we were first shown the fragments, I thought, oh, this is to Rika's benefit because this entity or whatever it is doesn't want Rika to die. But it shows to us that it isn't just a little girl who dies in, you know, June 1983. If she dies, the entire village is destroyed and the Himmenzawa syndrome is spread to the rest of Japan. So I think the entity wants to prevent that from happening. So that's why it's creating this loop. Like a never-ending loop in order for Rika to break this curse to, you know, I guess in simple terms, defeat Takano. Which is very, very interesting to think about. Why would this entity try to create this loop in order to save Himizawa? Which we don't know about. I can't even theorize about that. Another thing to talk about is someone told me to go reread a tip from Chapter 3 called Record of Malice. And I went ahead and reread that. It's from Sadako's point of perspective. I'm 100% sure about that. But what really stuck out to me. Sorry, nervous for some reason. Been doing 400 videos. I'm still nervous talking. Huh? What stuck out to me was that she never mentions Teppei by name. Hell, she doesn't even call him uncle. What's very interesting about this is that she's talking about a guy who tells her she's smelling, that she needs to take a bath or whatever. So at first we think, oh, it's Teppei, right? But then she says, but the other guy used to say that is dead, right? So the same thing that possessed him must possessing this guy. So that's very interesting because here's my thoughts on that. There's two possibilities for Tepe's death in chapter 3 now. One, Kechi actually did murder Tepe, right? He did murder Tepe and buried his body, and someone got rid of the body. Either it was the Mound Dogs or the Sonozakis. Not very sure about that, but really could be either one. And basically covered it up for him. Or two, Kechi didn't murder Tepe at all, and that he murdered a different guy instead. What? Why do I think this? Is that, as we know, L5 symptoms is one of the symptoms of L5 is that it makes your mind assume something, therefore you believe it's true. So it's either a random mound dog went inside Sadako's house and said, you're smelly, you should go take a bath or whatever. Went out, Tepe, Kechi murdered him and buried his body and all that. Or two, it was, the opposite. Tepe said that to Sadako. He went out. Then Kechi murdered him. Then a mountain dog went back to Sadako's house, told that to her. Because of the L5, Sadako thought it was her uncle. And she took a bath at 100 degrees or whatever, and pretty much that. So that's very interesting. I don't think there's going to be a definitive answer to that, which, that's fine. We've a couple of unanswered questions makes it more, fun to theorize and all that. But, yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting to think about that. Oh, also, the reason why Kechi kept seeing a white van in chapter 1 is because the bound dogs were observing him because he was extruding L5 symptoms. I mean, he wasn't really hiding it because he was carrying a fucking metal bat around, so obviously the mound dogs would take note of that and were pretty much watching him. So Kechi was right in that someone was stalking him. But it wasn't just Rena. Alright, enough talking. Let's actually finish up this chapter and get on to chapter 8. Okay, let's check the tips first. Okay, this fragment's end. I guess Rika finally managed to assemble all the pieces to her puzzle. But we don't know yet if her memories will pass on to her next wife. Rika always loses the memory of her death. I don't know if she can retain the memories of what she's discovered. What did you think? Did you have fun? Once you found out the answers, collecting them isn't so fun anymore. You don't agree? I see. You still might find something different by examining some old fragments. After all, the time we have here is endless. We have to find something to play with, because there's nothing to do here. For me, playing with these fragments stops being fun when I found out what's inside. But if you can tell me how to have fun with them even so, that makes you pretty smart. What? You want to know what I play with? I don't play. I'm just killing time. I like to imagine what Rika could have done in order to achieve the future she hopes for. I like to imagine a world that would have been happy for all of them. You found out how these worlds are set up by looking at the previous ones, right? I like to analyze whatever. What would need to change in order for Rika to win against Takano. You want to see what's on my mind? Too bad. I'm not showing that to you. In that world, Rika and her friends survived this struggle and broke through the fate of June 1983. It's just my imagination. It's not for me to share with you. Sure, the world that Rika's about to create is better than anything in my imagination, even if she's stuck on June 19th in 1983. I'm sure this now-ended world will remain one of Rika's brightest fragments either way. No matter how much she struggles, she actually overcomes her fate. It will be the most brilliant fragment of her story. I'm sure the life Rika lives lives makes for a better story than my boring imagination. You want to know what happened to Rika? She made a decision to redo her life once again with Hanyu. She is trying to live her life with all her might. That's what she learned from this world. Her next life has already begun. I do wonder what that life is like. I'm going there now to check. Do you want to come with me? Very poignant, Saffron. Hi, this is Higurashi 7. Thank you for playing Higurashi When They Cry Kai, Chapter 7, Minaguroshi. This time around, the scenario was almost like the answer page in a book of riddles. Or maybe the scenario is like a side dish we enjoyed alongside all the scenarios up to now. You can take it how you like. I just hope you enjoyed it. I was very nervous about releasing the scenario, because a mystery is only good when it's still a mystery. This scenario marks the end of that mystery. To be honest, I didn't want to release this chapter for a while. However, way too many similar stories are being published with no answers at all. A book of riddles means nothing if there's no answer page in the back. Coming up with an answer when you have no way to see if it's right or not is a little sad, I think. If there are no answers, you can't get any joy out of reading a book of riddles. I regret to see that there are way too many stories out there that don't offer this kind of joy. That's why I decided to release something that you can compare your answer to for the series. Since this world had a rather irregular presentation, there may not have been many people who reached what might be called the right answer. But it's not really about whether your answer was right or wrong. It's much more about how many questions you raised when reading the story and how many answers you were able to find. Thank you all very much for the solutions you've sent me. They were all wonderful theories, and some were thought out so much more than the actual story that I frequently thought about making them the right answer. We laugh. Also, your support has given me courage to finish writing the 7th chapter of this series. Thank you very much for supporting Higurashi. Finally, I would like to apologize about how I portrayed the Child Consolation Center. I don't know what it was like in 1983, but Child Consolation Centers are not mean places like I depicted in my story. I made the characters look so unfeeling, but in reality, the government today is the #1 hero for us civilians. In fact, those involved with child welfare and youth education are all extremely passionate and selfishly devoted people. Sorry for giving them such a negative image in this chapter. The next chapter, Matsubayashi, is going to be the last one of the series. I'm overwhelmed by the pressure of writing the last chapter of Higurashi When They Cry. I'm fucking overwhelmed by the pressure. Point it, dude! Which turned out to be such a long story. No shit. I hope you'll continue your kind support. Thank you all very much. 07th Expansion, Higurashi 07. God, I really enjoyed these little staff rooms. I don't know, it makes me realize that, I don't know, it's not like I'm writing a story in it or whatever, but it's very, like, I have like some of the same feelings as Higurashi 07 about creating something. Even though I'm not really creating anything, I'm more like, I don't know what to say, just adding commentary to something that already exists or whatever. But it's so interesting to see the inside of a creator's mind, and seeing, I'm not the only one who has these same feelings about creation, about the, kind of pressure about it and all that, and the, hesitation and all that. But, I very much, I feel like I get it. Man, I get it, man. I get it for real. I do. It's so something. Okay. Well, time for my final thoughts on this chapter. Oh boy. What a chapter. Oh my god, what a roller coaster of a chapter. I feel like some people might complain, or some people might dislike the first half of this chapter. Because really the first half of this chapter is about going to child conservation center and try to rescue Sadako, and that's pretty much it. While they might enjoy the second half because it's, oh, all the mysteries are finally getting revealed. It's Takano behind everything. Oh, this is what really happened to Tomiki, that night on Wangagashi. But I feel like the first half really supports the second half in this chapter, like much so than like in other chapters. I feel like because the first half really brings together. No, let me just state this. This chapter reveals to us what Himizawa truly is as a village. We finally uncover all of its secrets, what it truly is, and who everybody really is. We found out about the truth of this town. And the truth is, about this town, is that it's just a normal town with just eternal politics. That's really it. It's nothing like gigantic or anything like that. It's not like they're hiding a giant monster with underground or whatever. They're just a town full of people that are scared of, you know, scared of other the other villagers. Really, scared of being marked an outlaw, or no, marked as an outsider or whatever to everyone else. Which is why they kept up the status quo of the Hojo family. Which is very interesting. But in this chapter, we were able to bring together the entire town. Every single person, nearly every character that comes from Himizawa, we were able to bring together and under this one umbrella in order to save the life of a little girl. And all that. Which makes the second half of this chapter all the fucking more tragic. Like, tragic as fuck. That last scene with the government gunning down, or not really gunning down, but like killing the civilians of Himizawa, would still hit pretty hard. It would still be, pretty fucked up. It's like, these are innocent civilians and all that. But I think because of the first half of this chapter, it fucking hits. It hits like a goddamn bullet train. Swear to God, it fucking hits you. And it makes you that much more angrier at Takano. It's so fucking anger-inducing and sad and horrifying and so goddamn well made. It is so fucking well made that I can't believe what it did to me. You guys seen the last video? You've seen those video essay titles of like a blank game broke me. This fucking game's broken me like 15 times, and I keep going back to it. But yeah, this fucking game has that damn sway over me. But yeah, God, it is super hard. Like, maybe I'll do a tier list at the end of this Let's Play, but it's so fucking hard to put all these chapters onto a single tier list because they're all so well done in its purpose. Like, I feel like each chapter has a distinct purpose. Like, chapter 1 was, an introduction. Introduce us to the mystery, to the village and all that. Chapter 2 was to introduce us to, what would chapter 2? To the Sonozakis. It's a good thing. To introduce us to the Sonozakis and see what their family is. Chapter 3 was to introduce us to Sadako's struggle and the Hojo curse. Chapter 4 was to explain Rika's past and see how the village was in the past back in the during the dam conflict. Chapter 5 was to answer the Sonozaki's family issues. Chapter 6 was to answer Rika's issues. No, not Rika, Rena's issues, sorry. And chapter 7 was to truly show who Rika's struggle with this time loop and Hanyu's hesitantness towards trying to break fate, and how in the end she wants to break it. And I feel like with chapter 8, I think chapter 8 is going to explain Takano's backstory. Or answer Takano's backstory, because I keep seeing the box art on Steam of chapter 8. It's a little kid version of Takano, or I'm going to assume is Takano. So that's going to be very interesting. But yes, this has been enough talking about chapter 7. Let's finally head into chapter 8. The last chapter of Higurashi When They Cry. Well, here we are. Here we are. Chapter 8. A year in the making. God, it's so weird. Finally being here. So weird. I came into this damn game thinking, hell, I fucking compare this game to damn Doki Doki. And I'm not saying Doki Doki is a bad game by any means. It's a great game, but it is nothing like Doki Doki Literature Club. I'll tell you that for sure. But let's just get right into it. Let's go. Let's get in. Here we go. Here we fucking go. At least let it end with a blissful dream. Festival accompanying chapter. The riddle you have been entrusted with solving now finally becomes unraveled. What must be done to stop the chain? And what will happen in the ultimate end? It's a showdown between the conclusion you reached and the one I reached. There is no difficulty. You should understand that now. Let's do this. Let's do this. Everyone is entitled to happiness. Difficult part is accepting that. Everyone is entitled to happiness. Difficult part is fulfilling that. I too am entitled to happiness. The difficult part is working out a compromise. Alright. What is this? The study was filled with piles of books and papers. In that study, there was a full-fledged old man writing something at his desk in utmost concentration. There was also a little girl sorting out papers on the carpet. She almost looked as though she was playing with them. But the serious expression she was wearing made it clear that she wasn't.
おじいちゃん、資料の分けっこができたよ。
Miyoko.
ありがと
Oh,
う。さてさて、どういう結果になったかな？
the grandfather.
同じ症例の人がこれだけ集まった。全国平均と比べても明らかに異常なくらい。
やはりな。こっちも興味深い論文を見つけたところだ。精神外科と文化についてまとめたものでな。前頭葉に宿主とは別の意志を持った存在があることを予見したものだ。
前頭葉は人間が人間らしくあることを司る部分だよね。
そうだ。人の感情は心が生み出すのではない。 脳という名の器官が分泌物を生み出して与える副産物に過ぎ、その脳に特定の干渉をするナノ単位の生命体の集合が存在し、ある命令系統を持つ一つのコロニーに関与したならば。
So are parasites the cause of the spread of ideology? When did ideologies clash? Is that because different parasites are competing to expand their habitat?
あるいは教育の分布か、国境の分布か、人種の分布か。我々の世界の異なる文化コミュニティの存在とその対立の一因は、そういった人の思想に影響を及ぼす微細な生命体の存在にあると仮定している。
Well, isn't that a nice hypothesis?
おじいちゃんと同じことを考えている人が外国にもいたんだね。
もちろんいるとも。可視不可視を問わず、地球上には無数の生命体がいて、その中には宿主の体内に潜伏して共存し、時には宿主を支配したりすることが広く知られている。
Remember, kids, there are parasites in your brain. You better whip them out.
そして実際に人体内にその存在をたくさん発見してもいる。にもかかわらず、人体に潜伏しその宿主を支配する生命体の存在については頑くなに否定してきた。家庭すらも含めてな。
どうしてだろうね。人間だけ特別な存在のわけはないのに。
それを仮定することはすなわち、意志に基づいた言動や信念を疫学的原因から派生したものと置き換えられて、対処策もそれと同様とみなされる危険があるからだ。
If conflicts in ideology can be resolved through debate, then they're peaceful. Where those conflicts occur epidemically, they become frightening.
And if one were to treat bad thoughts of their spread of culture as an epidemic?
中世の歴史に登場するペストなどを想像しなさい。悪い伝染病が大流行する。その患者を強制的に入院させ、完治するまで退院させない。完治できず、そのまま病院で死んでしまうこともある。するとその死体は焦燥となる。さらに患者が触れたものまで衛生のため全て没収して焼き捨てる。身近の家族にも感染の疑いがあるから強制的に入院させねばならん。
So they hospitalized healthy people over individual ideas?
思想を病気と置き換えなさい。
This is the same.
完治するまで退院させない。触れたものは感染の疑いがあるから全て焼き捨てる。家族にも感染の疑いがあるから強制入院。
でも思想なんて個人の自由なんでしょ。ペストとは違う。
If an idea was created by parasites, it would be exactly the same as a plague.
つまり思想は治療不可能な伝染病と置き換えられるわけだ。
So you mean anyone with a different idea is treated like they have a disease?
そういうことだ。この考えを延長すると無差別、そして無秩序な大量虐殺が起こる。そうすると人類は大規模な粛清を肯定してしまう論調になりかねん。
Yeah.
だから脳内で宿主を支配する生命体を語ることは今の時代ではタブーになっているのだ。
タブーって？
触れてはならない、考えてもならないということだな。だから誰も研究せん。いや、それどころか脳内に侵入し影響を及ぼす存在がいると考えることすら忘れられている。 万物の長たる霊長類を支配する未知の生命体などいるはずがないと頭から決めつけている。
なんだかお粗末な話。いないことの証明なんて悪魔の証明。絶対に不可能なのに。
その通り。悪魔がいることを証明することはたやすい。悪魔を連れてくればいいのだからな。だが、いないことを証明することはできん。いないを連れてくることなどできんのだからな。
なんだか脳を支配する生命体が自分たちの存在を秘密にするためにその宿主の人間たちを操っているみたい。
Me and my grandfather shared a happy laugh together.
人間も自然界の生き物の一つに過ぎん。食物連鎖の頂点にいるだけでそれをもって神格化された存在であると思い込むなど愚かしいことなのだ。人とてあらゆる微生物やウイルスに支配されうるのだ。その存在が今日まで発見されていないからといってそれをもって存在しないという証拠にはならん。絶対に存在する。必ず存在するのだ。
科学の世界にもたくさん存在が仮定されていて。
そうだ。それらの仮定をした科学者が全て生きているうちに評価を受けられたわけではない。世まいごとだと呆れられ、その正しさを証明できなかった科学者も大勢いたのだ。
でもおじいちゃんは生きているうちに証明されるといいね。じゃなかったらおじいちゃんがかわいそう。
大丈夫だよ。神様は努力する者を見捨てたりはしない。努力は必ずいつか結実するのだ。
いつかってそれはいつ？
神がいつ降臨されるのかは誰も知らない。それは例えるなら泥棒がいつ訪れるのかわからないように。だから予期せずしてその時を迎えて不信心であったことに歯ぎしりすることがないよう常に目を覚ましていなさい。
That was something that my grandfather said all the time. Nobody knows when efforts will bear fruit. It will happen one day.
No kidding. I get that.
That's why you must always work hard, so you have no regrets when the time comes. Your efforts will bear fruit someday. That's what he meant.
でもおじいちゃんが生きているうちに絶対に努力が実る？生きてるうちに認められなかった科学者がたくさんいるのに。
That was such a cool thing to say. I didn't mean to be cruel. I had seen how hard my grandfather had been working, and I also knew he wouldn't live forever. I just wanted his work to gain recognition before he died.
Do you know of the resurrection of Jesus Christ?
Yeah? He was crucified and resurrected after 3 days. Tell me about it.
How do you think Jesus was resurrected?
Didn't he just get up as if he was waking up in the morning?
He was buried after his execution, so his body was in the ground.
Did he break open the tombstone and crawl out like a zombie?
No. That wouldn't be called a resurrection. The sinners who killed Jesus imagined exactly the same thing. Jesus predicted just before he was executed that he would
come back to life after 3 days. The sinners buried Jesus, sealed his tomb, and posted guards to watch over it. But what Jesus meant wasn't that he would resurrect physically. He meant his teachings would be resurrected. After 3 days, Jesus' teachings were resurrected. People regained their belief. The hearts of those who wanted to be shown the proper way revived his teachings. That's what the resurrection of Jesus is all about. He came back to life in the heart of his believers. Jesus doesn't exist physically in this earth, but he exists in people's hearts. In other words, that's when Jesus became an existence superior to humans.
Even if it's after the author's death.
その偉業は必ずやよみがえる。その時私の体が朽ち果ててしまっていても、私の存在はよみがえって評価を受けるのだ。
それはおじいちゃんが神様になったということ？
そうだよ。私の研究はいつか必ず認められる。その時、おじいちゃんは神様になれるということなんだよ。だから自分が生きているうちに評価されることに焦る必要はないのだ。その時が訪れるのが私が生きているうちなのか、そうでないのか。
It's kind of weird to think that what I'm doing right now kind of transcends my life. Thousands of years from now, after I'm long dead, people can come back to these videos and hear my words as if I'm still here. Such a interesting thing about Troy. That we can now say words into the future, even after our bodies are gone. We can still become ideas, can still become voices that people can believe in. Isn't that very weird to think about? This game's still making me talk about weird ass questions, and that's why I love it so much.
それは神様にもわからない。だがその日は必ず訪れる。だからその日の訪れを疑うことなく、ひたすらに努力を続けなくてはならないのだよ。
It was very sad to hear my grandfather said that his life would end one day. He wasn't ill, and he didn't only have a few years left to live. But so next to the average lifespan, his remaining years didn't look like much. The only person left in my life was my grandfather, so I didn't even want to consider what it'd be like with him gone. Grandfather must have remembered that I didn't like to talk about that subject. With a tender smile, he gently patted my head.
もちろんおじいちゃんも自分が生きているうちに研究を認めてもらいたい。だから精一杯頑張るよ。
私もおじいちゃんが世界中の人に褒めてもらえるようにいっぱいいっぱいお手伝いする。
I purposely didn't mention the before you die part. I caught myself before I said it.
ありがとう。嬉しいぞ。
Grandfather smiled in satisfaction. His researcher wasn't exactly outrageous. He wasn't trying to uncover the mysteries of the universe. He was only searching for the possibility that parasites could be responsible for human behavior. Nothing more than that. Nothing outrageous. It really wasn't a wild idea. He even had some weeds. Himizawan Village, Shishiborn City, Prefecture. The villagers are possessed by a powerful homesickness. When they are unable to return, they allegedly behave abnormally, as if they are cursed. There are also some bizarre rules in place in the village, based on their belief system. When he was working with the military during the war, my grandfather noticed similarities between the people in Himizawa and assumed that some kind of existence was responsible for their odd behavior. He'd been researching it ever since then.
Really? Okay.
In the middle of the 20th century, numerous strange diseases were discovered all over Japan. Most of them were caused by infectious parasites, and people started to pay attention to this forgotten field of study. Grandfather's research was simply one of those investigations into such
I had to sneeze.
Was simply one of those investigations into such diseases. Therefore, he believed it would be published amongst other research and attain recognition soon. But if his research didn't bear fruit before his death, I wanted to continue it. I wanted to continue his research. Grandfather taught me resurrection isn't something that happens physically. It's when your life's work is appreciated. That's what he meant by resurrection. That's when he'll become a god. So when my grandfather dies, he'll still be with me forever. I wouldn't have to be alone ever again. I will always be with my grandpa. Our works will gain recognition, and we will both become gods, gaining eternal peace. I will make my grandfather into a god. I will become a god. Therefore, we will be granted eternity. We'll be together forever and ever.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say. Now where the hell are we?
I was working at the key on a keychain. The key was labeled hen house, but the lock Eriko was trying to open didn't belong to our door. It should have opened effortlessly. At least that's what was supposed to happen. But it didn't open. I noticed beads of sweat forming on Eriko's forehead. She was the one who came up with this idea. Eriko was starting to panic. The rest of us started to panic too. This only opens the hen house. Let's stop. Let's go back. Shh. We were supposed to be cleaning out the hen house. If they found us back here, if they found out why we were here and why we were trying to open up the lock to the back door, then all four of us were sure to be sentenced to sprayed piggy. What the fuck is this? Don't panic, Eriko. The key opens this lock, right? You already tried it, right? Will you shut up for a minute? It's the right key. It's just hard to open, that's all. She was almost shrieking. Our hearts were pounding loudly. It was as though the sound of our heartbeats was echoing throughout the hallway. And at that point, we heard footsteps that didn't belong to a child. Shh! Somebody's coming! The three of us held our breath, but Eriko didn't hear it. She kept fussing with the lock and the key, and as if everything would be okay if she could just open the lock. Eriko, somebody's coming. Be quiet! I know this is the right key! I'm not dreaming. I already tried it and opened. Come on, why isn't this working? When this lock is open, we could be happy and we could say goodbye to this hell. Eriko, someone's coming. What the fuck was that? Hen house? Piggy's... What? My father and mother died. I don't know exactly how old they were. I was too young to remember. They weren't shopping without me. That must be why they were punished. It was a train accident.
Train accident? Okay, so not Rika. So I guess still Takano?
What a terrible disaster. A lot of people died in that incident. But maybe my father was one of the lucky ones. He was still alive when he arrived at the hospital, so he was able to share his final words with me. My mother died instantly.
お父さんお父さんお父さんお父さん
I didn't want to admit that this person I could hardly recognize was my father. As I called out to him, I hoped that it was someone else instead. But, unfortunately, it was my father. Maybe I shouldn't have woken him, because when I woke him up, he was reminded of the miserable agony that he had forgotten. He tried to move his right arm so he could pat my head, but his arm was wrapped in bandages and his hand was no longer there. I couldn't find his hand anywhere in the bed. I only had scary memories of his right hand. Its main job was to slap me when I did something bad, but I never wished it to be gone. Besides, that hand also patted my head, even though that only happened a few times. It was a big, warm hand and stroked my head very gently. But no matter what good deeds I did, he could no longer rub my head. No, his hand was the least of his worries. He had to go into emergency surgery. The doctors already warned me that the chance of him surviving was very low. That was why I was allowed to see him, regardless of his condition. Not only could he no longer rub my head, he might be gone forever.
お父さん、手術できっと良くなるよね。お父さんきっと元気になれるよね。なれるよね。
よく聞きなさい。お父さんはダメかもしれない。もしもお父さんが死んでも。
やだやだ、お父さんは元気になるよ。お医者様がちゃんと手術してくれるもん。だから死んだりなんかしないんだよ。
He was a stubborn and old-fashioned father. He believed endurance was a virtue and he never complained about anything. That was why I couldn't believe he actually said he might not make it. I tried desperately to deny his words, but even that wish wouldn't prolong his life. My father, knowing his time was limited, tried to tell me some important things, but I interrupted his efforts by crying like a baby. I just wanted him to slap me, just like he used to do every time I cried like a baby, but he would never slap me again.
よく聞きなさい。お父さんもお母さんも親類というものがいない。
Jeez.
だからお父さんが死んだらお前の世話をしてくれる人は誰もいない。
He didn't need to tell me that. My parents used to tell me that all the time, so I was aware of that fact. In other words, my father was the only relative I had left in this entire world.
もしもな、お父さんが死んだら高野先生を頼りなさい。
Dr. Takano.
高野ひふみ先生だよ。
Is her last name not even Takano?
言ってみなさい。
高野ひふみ。
そうだ、高野ひふみ先生だよ。高野先生はお父さんの恩師なんだ。きっとお前を助け。
お父さん、お父さん、お父さん、お父さん。
Many doctors came into the room in a hurry. He wanted to tell me something else, but the doctor stopped him from talking, so I wasn't able to hear him. I was kicked out of the room. I didn't know what to do. Nobody told me how my father was doing or when the surgery was going to start. Nobody told me that was going to be the last conversation I ever had with my father.
Jeez.
I think I asked people at the government office about Dr. Takano this goddamn music again. They asked me if I knew his phone number. I said I didn't. Then they didn't ask me anything further. Sometimes they told me they'd look into it, but nothing led to anything. They couldn't find me a guardian, so I ended up going to an orphanage. At the time, there were plenty of orphans from the war, so though there were many orphanages around, they were all full. There were also some orphanages run by civilians. I was sent to one of those civilian orphanages. There was no profit to be had in taking in an orphan in the first place. So I thought those civilians who were running orphanages must have been very good people. I was sure they hoped that the children would grow in this loving environment and enter into society with a sense of gratitude. But reality isn't so kind. How many children in this world can actually express their gratitude towards their parents in the first place? Children are supposed to be nurtured by their parents' love. Therefore, when that environment is destroyed, their hearts are wounded. Every child has his or her own personality. Receiving affection doesn't guarantee that a child will become someone angelic. Not everyone's hearts can be healed. That was why there are some problem kids at my orphanage. Maybe I shouldn't call them problem kids though. The sadness and despair of losing their parents, and the anger at having to hide such feelings filled those kids' hearts. Spending time individually with the children could have solved their problems. But the orphanage where I was, none of the staff members even tried to spend time with them or put in an effort to understand them. All they could do was make sure that the kids followed the rules. Therefore, they could only see the children's emotional pleas for help as problems. In this world, nobody expresses love without expecting something in return. The person who founded that orphanage was expecting something in return as well. He wanted the children to appreciate him. That was why such a faint dream was destroyed by cruel reality. The children called the orphanage a prison, and nobody appreciated the staff at all. In fact, all they did was complain. That made the staff slowly realize that love alone couldn't run a facility like that. Just like how the children called it a prison, the staff started to recognize the facility as a prison too. There was a chain reaction resulting from mistrust on both sides. The staff bound the children with rules so they could suppress problem behavior. There was a framed picture of the founder of this orphanage, but I had never seen him in person. Was he satisfied with the fact that he put his own money into this social service? Or maybe he finally realized his dream of being surrounded by angelic children and being celebrated for what he did was simply that, a dream. I don't know, but there's one thing I'm certain of. Such a dream didn't exist at the orphanage. There are so many rules and several plausible standards outlined for us. But the most valued one was silence. Children's chatter tends to increase each other's volume just like the mics drawing closer. Sometimes that leads to fights and the disturbance of order. So children were forbidden from speaking with each other. With those disallowed, they must have thought things would go smoothly. However, I think I always heard people's voices at the orphanage. There were two kinds of voices. One was the staff yelling, and the other was the children crying. We were not allowed to walk around inside of the orphanage freely, so we never knew who it was that was crying. One time, along with the crying and yelling, we heard the noise of metallic things being smashed against each other. We knew it was some kind of punishment, but there was no way for us to even imagine what it was. We trembled, pretended we didn't hear anything, and kept working on our assignments. One of my roommates told me it was the casket punishment, but she didn't tell me any further, and I didn't want to know either. Even if we behaved exactly the same way as yesterday, if the staff were in a bad mood, they might pick on us. So even if I didn't want to know, I might suddenly find out what the casket punishment is one day. The footsteps of a staff member were getting closer. We noticed them, and so we straightened our backs and pretended we were studying hard. It was more important that the staff saw us doing so than us actually getting any work done. I noticed the girl next to me was falling asleep, so I poked her with my elbow. She noticed my signal and trained her back like the other children. It was almost evening. This was the hardest time for us to keep ourselves awake, and the most dangerous time. The door to our room opened, and a mean-looking man showed up. Then he looked around to make sure none of us were falling asleep. Even if we were actually starting hard, if he thought we were asleep, we were out. That was why we had to make sure we appeared to be studying very hard. The man walked around our desks. I hoped he would just walk by me. That was what we all prayed, and as we kept working on our homework. The more we pretended to study hard, the more we could hear the sound of metal objects. The sound of metal objects crashing into each other along with screams. We couldn't even imagine what the poor subject of that punishment was going through. Maybe there was something even worse than the casket punishment. To erase such fears, we tried to concentrate even harder on our work. We kept working, as the metal sounds and the screams went on forever. Jeez. Okay, I see see how Takano grew up and how it might kind of fuck her up. The only time we were allowed to exchange words with our roommates was right after turning the lights off to go to bed. Being located in the middle of the mountains, the orphanage was very quiet at night. After making sure the staff members were far enough from our room, we enjoyed talking amongst ourselves. That was the only leisure time allowed to us, though it wasn't anything nice like enjoying pleasant conversation. Why? Because we mostly talked about others behind their backs. We spoke of things like that member of staff is only strict or unfair or malicious towards this person, so on. We just repeated those topics forever until someone couldn't keep themselves awake anymore. We even discussed how we could get back at the staff, and we took revenge on all of them in our imagination. Some kids even started to cry when talking about it, difficult as it was for us. Although the subjects we spoke of were negative, talking about them was the only way to vent our frustration. Even though we felt despair about tomorrow, we were able to fall asleep. But sometimes a different subject popped up. It was about the Yurigoka House of Love and Mercy on the other side of the river. Yeah, over there I hear they get not only nap time but snack time too. Plus their president is a very nice person. The House of Love and Mercy was a privately run orphanage, just like the one I was at. But it was a very kind facility. Unlike ours, it seemed like a fantasy land compared to our current environment. A few years before, when this place was a lot worse, a few children tried to escape. It was hard to believe. There was a time when this orphanage was even worse to live at. Supposedly 3 or 4 people tried to escape. I don't know the exact number though. They headed to the House of Love and Mercy. Their escape was a success. Except for one unlucky child, they were able to get to the property of the House of Love and Mercy. I guess the staff couldn't follow them into the other orphanage's property. In other words, the other facility's property had to be out of their jurisdiction. The staff were frustrated that kids got away from them, and they dragged the one they caught back here. I'm sure they wanted to bring back the others got away from them too. I'm certain that the staff were determined not to let a single one escape. It was easy to see that determination in the obstinate way they locked the place up after that event. But they were never able to bring back the ones that got away. No matter how much the staff were mortified, they couldn't reclaim the children and punish them. In other words, if you could make it to the House of Love and Mercy, then you could escape the evil crutches of this hell. On the other hand, the one they caught went through such misery afterwards. Yet the exact details of how he was punished were never passed down. All that remained were ominous phrases left by those who knew him at the time. The drowned ducky, the mashed caterpillar, the sprayed piggy. I can't even imagine what kind of punishments they were. Sprayed piggy? What the fuck is sprayed piggy? The only thing I can say is that those punishments were supposed to be far more harsh than the casket punishment, which was the most cruel punishment I knew at the time. I can only imagine how horrible those punishments were from their ominous names. After that, the captured kid's wish came true, and he was able to leave the orphanage. Was he able to leave this orphanage safely, enjoy his freedom while breathing in fresh air under the blue sky? Well, according to the rumors, that wasn't what happened at all. While he was playing in the boiler room, he slipped and fell, injured his brain, and died. The children were instructed not to go into the boiler room after that incident. Everyone knew the boiler room was always locked. So everyone knew he was killed. And not just that, he was killed after being tortured. He was killed to teach the other children that they would face hell on earth if they tried to escape. Yet those who faced that risk and made it out obtained ordinary average lives full of love and mercy's namesake, which were far better conditions than we lived in here. Maybe the house of love and mercy was really heaven. Maybe all the orphanages were pretty much the same. But compared to my orphanage, I bet anything else would have been better. Even if someone escaped successfully, the police would catch him. Then he'd be sent back to the orphanage, which would be pretty much the same as being killed. However, if he could reach the house of love and mercy, they'd take him in. They wouldn't send him back. By talking about escaping to the house of love and mercy, we were trying to forget how cruel reality was to us. Then one day the leader of our group, Eriko, said to us quietly, "Would you like to try to escape if you had a chance to?" Who didn't want to escape from here? It was a rather foolish question, but that wasn't what she meant. If there's a chance to escape, would you take that chance, knowing what you had to go through if you got caught? That was what she meant. Not one of us could answer immediately. If the previous escape incident was a total success, then we might have fought differently. But after that, the orphanage had tightened up security to prevent runaways. All the doors and windows were locked heavily, and it wouldn't be at all easy to get out. Even if another group escape was planned, the success rate would be very low. 3 escaped and 1 was caught before. Maybe 2 will be caught next time. No, maybe everyone would be. If I could, I'd want to escape. But the House of Love and Mercy is so far away. The bridge is long too. We'd all be caught before we get there. Besides, we can't even go outside. Everything is locked up. There were locks all over the orphanage. To escape, you need a key for both the inside and the outside. And after the lights were turned off, even each section of the hallway was individually locked. Make no mistake, this was a prison. According to rumors, orphanages receive government funding depending on the number of children they house. So if anyone escapes, they lose money. Also, if we were to expose the conditions at the orphanage, they would end up being inspected, and things would get complicated for them. That was why they were so intent on keeping us locked up. Jeez. Sure, if there was a chance, I would want to escape. But realistically, there's no way we could. Every door is locked. Well, did you know? The hen house in the courtyard uses the same key as the door to the back stairs. Eh? Really? Shh! Eriko shushed us. Sometimes mass-produced locks take the same key. Of course, most places use different types of locks so that this won't happen, but the staff at the orphanage must have overlooked it. So there were 2 locks that use the same key at the orphanage. However, most of us never had a chance to even touch the keys. But there were a few exceptions. One of those was the hen house. Each room group took turns taking care of different chores. If your group was assigned to clean the henhouse, you'd have to get the key to it from the teacher's office. You were supposed to return the key immediately after you were done, but while taking care of the henhouse, the key was in the children's hands. While the staff would occasionally come around to check, they couldn't keep an eye on us forever. Eriko-chan, you aren't thinking about using that key, are you? Let's not. It's too dangerous. Of course it's dangerous if there's only one of us, but it's different if we're in a group. Wait, why? Do you know why only one kid was caught the last time they tried to escape? They were desperate, and so to escape as a group, they did something to increase the chance of success. That was why only one of them was caught. What did they do? They scattered as they ran. They dashed in different directions. They waited until the day when there was only a few people working at the orphanage and ran this way and that. And so, although it all depended on luck, it increased the chance of success for sure. On your own, you'd probably have no hope, but if the staff were to chase after other children, then your own chance of escaping successfully would increase. In other words, Eriko was inviting us to escape with her. The more children joined, the more each of our chances would increase. But among us, there were children who tattled to the staff for their own benefit. So she had to be very careful about who she talked to. Eriko must have trusted us a lot. Eriko, me, Tomo, me, and Kikiko. Kikuko. For children. Do any of you want to stay here a day longer? 3 of us shook our heads. But at the same time, we couldn't agree to escape with her either. Of course we don't want to stay here a day longer, or even an hour longer. Even if we did exactly the same thing as we did yesterday, we might get yelled at tomorrow. I can't stand this anymore. I can't stand living in fear of what to do and what not to do so I won't be yelled at. We all feel the same way. We could endure strict rules, but it was almost impossible to endure vague ones. It wasn't too much of a stretch to say that the rules depended on the mood of the staff. This is okay, that isn't okay. Such borderline rules change daily. And if we were to say anything about that, we would be treated horribly for it. I will escape, even if I have to do it alone. Like I said, the more people that join, the better our chance. Think about it. If they find out about this hen house key trick, they are sure to change the lock on the back door. In other words, we only have one chance. So even if you regret not joining in later, it'll be too late. But, I'm scared. I'm scared too. If we get caught, we'll be killed. Tomomi and Kikiko weren't the only ones who felt afraid. The fear is perfectly understandable. Because all of a sudden the fear of the punishment that would follow had become very realistic. I'm sure Eriko felt the same way too. But her courage was suppressing her fear, and because of that she shared her idea with us. So, do you plan to stay here forever? No way! I know you're scared, but this is the only chance we have. You have to be brave just this once. What about you, Mirko? Don't you want to go with me? Unlike Tomi and Kikiko, I wasn't trembling that much. Of course I was scared in my own way, but compared to the other two, I must have appeared rather calm. Can we really escape? Of course Eriko couldn't guarantee our success, but I had to ask her anyway. There's no guarantee, but if you join me, I'll have a better chance of escaping than trying to run on my own. Of course, the same goes for you too. Eriko gave a calculated reason, but I'm sure she just wanted a friend to agree with her. That was probably more important to her than increasing her chances to escape. Tomi, Kikiko, if you're too scared, then I won't force you. Mirko and I will escape ourselves. 2 is enough. Well... Eriko rushed the 2 to make up their minds. It almost looked cold, but that was her way of mustering their courage. Because it was very possible that, regardless of the outcome of our escape attempt, as our roommates, those 2 would be held responsible. It's not like we'll do it tomorrow, Our turn is to take care of the henhouse is in a week. We'll wait for the perfect time to do it. If we don't feel that it's safe, then we'll wait until our next turn. We'll be very careful. The rotation of the staff and the timing were important, but we also each had to know the way to the House of Love and Mercy. We were planning to split up, so we had to know the area. I made up my mind. Okay, I'm coming with you, but let's time our escape very carefully, okay? Of course, we'll be killed if we get caught. I don't want to die. I'll come too. Me too. Totally and Kikuko agreed, and so we all decided to escape as a group. We waited for the perfect opportunity. We waited for the day where only a few staff members were at the orphanage, and we decided to let God take care of the rest.
And back to the beginning. Now it makes a whole bunch of sense.
Ah, it's open. Maybe it was the way I did it. Eriko tried to open the lock several times without success, but I got it open on the first attempt. The back door opened slowly, and we felt a cool breeze. This wasn't the world of freedom just yet. In fact, it was the exact opposite. If the staff were to find out we were here, we would be in big trouble. It was a world of danger. But unless we went through that dangerous world, we wouldn't be able to go any further.
よし行くよ
Damn, we finally got voice acting?
I think Eriko wanted to say that. We were planning to leave with that as our cue. But what we heard instead wasn't Eriko's voice.
Oh shit. We started at 1. It was raining. We all got soaked immediately and our clothes stuck to our skin. While that would normally be very uncomfortable, we couldn't even stop to think about that. We could only keep running in the rain. We were dashing on gravel, but it felt more like trudging through a muddy rice field. My feet kept sinking and I couldn't pull them up. I was frustrated because no matter how fast I tried to run, I wasn't getting any speed. I felt a sense of urgency. I heard someone yelling escape behind me, and all I could do was run like crazy. Okay.
通りに
Yo.
バラバラの方向に
With Eriko's cue, we all went different ways, hoping that everyone would be coming after us. Would we be able to reunite safely at the House of Love and Mercy? All 4 of us there together, maybe someone would be missing. No, maybe everyone else would make it, and I'd be the one who gets caught. My thoughts were interrupted by the voice of a staff member coming from behind me. The staff members should have numbered fewer than us, so if I was lucky they wouldn't be coming after me. Praying that the staff's voices I heard in the distance weren't after me, I looked back for a moment. If I had time to turn around, why didn't I take another step forward? Why didn't I try to escape further? As I turned around, I felt a huge hand cover my face. Its pinky finger slipped into my open mouth.
Shit.
The hand grabbing my face shoved me into the muddy gravel. Of course, I didn't stay quiet. I fought back, and then I saw his face. It was the scariest face I'd ever seen. I realized it immediately. He only wanted to capture me alive to use me as an example. Considering what would happen to me afterwards, killing me here on the spot wouldn't pose any problem, would it? Yes, he looked at me with unworldly hate, ready to end my life here and now. His pinky finger ended up touching my tongue. Ugh. The indescribably nasty taste and an icky feeling towards my whole body. Ah, that's it. This is what my murder tastes like. He was going to shove that finger down my windpipe and suffocate me. So in order to live, I fought back in the only way I could.
Biting it?
Gah! Something warm filled my mouth.
Yep.
Felt like swallowing blood after a nose bleed. I spit it from my mouth and ran without turning around, leaving behind the staff member clutching his pinky finger.
God damn.
I heard his roars echoing behind me. It wasn't a man that was after me. It was a beast. He had no interest in capturing me. His only goal was to see me dead. My shoes had slipped off. They were sneakers, so they came off easily while I was running like mad. My bare feet struck the gravel over and over. It was painful, but I didn't care. Because if I stopped, I knew what would happen to me. Tree branches cut my face and barbed wire scratched my thighs. My feet and toes were bloody from running on gravel. Jeez. The blood from the staff member's pinky finger dripped down from my mouth, staining my chin and chest. I was running for my life with scratches and cuts all over my body. If I were to get caught, I would be killed. If my pursuer had any sense, I would be killed after being tortured. If he didn't, I would be killed on the spot. I don't want to be killed. I don't want to be killed. My lungs and heart were about to explode. My mind was blank for fear and lack of oxygen. I was about to lose consciousness. I might have given in if I didn't hear the voice of the staff members coming after me. My knees were shaking. My legs wouldn't move properly. I felt like I was going to fall like a puppet with his strings cut. But I couldn't fall. I couldn't fall just yet. It was too late. My face had hit the gravel. I felt the awful sensation of falling. Immediately after the roar of the beast coming from behind me. Oh shit. I must have hit my thigh against the steering wheel when I jumped. I can feel the throbbing pain delaying slightly. I'm sweating all over. I wiped the sweat on my forehead and put my head on my chest. I only then realizing how fast my heart was beating. I rubbed my thigh. I rubbed it in a straight line. That's not where I hit the steering wheel. But I feel like this is where it hurts. I can't see a scary beast in the moonlit car. I have my shoes on, and I'm not covered in blood. My toes are fine, too. Someone knocked on the window, startling me.
Sansa, 時間です。
Oh, shit. Okay, when the hell is this happening? Okay, so we're back to present.
ありがとう。
I wanted to take a nap, so I told him to come wake me up in an hour. Maybe an hour was too long. Too long a nap actually makes you tired. No kidding. I put my seat back up and got out of the car. The cool breeze feels good on my skin. I only see the moon. There's nothing else to see on this mountain trail. My car and a command vehicle disguised as a trailer are parked on the side of the street. I can still feel that bad taste in my mouth. I spat it out on the side of the street. But even that couldn't get rid of it. The taste of blood, saliva, and rain. Sweat from my forehead and raindrops got into my mouth, but I couldn't swallow. So I ended up drooling. That sensation around my lips brought back memories, and I tried to wipe my mouth. Maybe I'm nervous. That's why it's such a bad dream. I think there's a coffee machine in the command vehicle. An unpleasant cup of coffee will wake me up.
どう？何か動きは？
いえ、何も。先ほどジーチから定期連絡が。問題なしとのことです。
そう。ねえ、どなたかコーヒーを入れてくださらない？
はい。ミルクと砂糖は？
ミルクだけ。あ、やっぱり砂糖も入れてくださる。
I still have a bad taste in my mouth. The feeling of biting and crushing his middle finger and his filthy blood filling my mouth. I'm sure a sweeter cup of coffee will wash down that bad taste and also wake me up from my nightmare completely. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Very interesting. Oh, that's it? Oh, experience a memory of escape.
Should I keep going? I did spend a good, like, the first 20 minutes explaining the last chapter. Yeah, let's keep going. Screw it, yeah. Okay, let's save. New tips. No tips. Ooh, interesting new background. Okay, let's just go.
はい、バンケットより後方。スピーチあと一人で乾杯に入ります。準備できてるね。
後方 OK です。内部全然聞こえないんで、スピーチが終わるタイミングでコールをお願いします。
いいかい。各宅にビールは10本ずつだよ。ちゃんと自分の縄張りにスムーズに運んでね。
Banquet, huh? Young hotel workers dressed smartly in bow ties pulled bottle after bottle out of the beer cases, preparing for the toast. They waited for the queue to serve the drinks while listening through the intercom. At a normal party, they could put bottles of beer on the table ahead of time, but if there was a lecture before the party, then they couldn't. Guests don't mind sushi going dry due to a long speech, but they don't like seeing their tables get wet with condensation from the bottles of beer. More than anything, they certainly don't want to drink warm beer. Ain't that true? That's why beer has to be served right before a toast. Oh, there's always a speech before a toast. Usually a long one. Especially at a big party like this, there are lots of guests that give speeches, so it's extremely difficult to know when to serve. For that reason, bottles ended up sitting outside by the banquet room, and people end up drinking warm beer anyway. There were several dozen tables with white tablecloths on them in the banquet room. Approximately 8 people were sitting at each table, so there were at least a few hundred people in the room. The banquet room was filled with excitement. There were many plates with many different kinds of food on each table. Sushi platter, sashimi platter, fruit platter. Also along the wall there were cooks ready to serve fresh sashimi. All of the guests appeared to be well-mannered gentlemen and were clearly notable people in various different fields. The huge and beautiful chandelier above them clearly indicated that this hotel held a status good enough for these famous people. An elderly gentleman was giving a lengthy speech on the stage before making a toast. Usually people don't like such long speeches, especially if it's before a toast. But the guests occasionally shouted yes, yes, and sometimes gave him loud applause, filling the room with their fervor. Well, maybe fervor was a pleasant way to put it. It was probably more accurate to say their excitement was bizarre. Which country would actually teach people not to show respect towards their own flag? There are no others. It's happening only in Japan. That's right, that's right!
これからはお国のためよりも個人の才能を伸ばす時代。
So I'm gonna guess this is a Tokyo meeting banquet?
バカ言っちゃいけない。いいですか。彼らが今勉学に励み、夢や進路を自由に選択できるのは先人たちが切り開いた道場があってこその権利。
To know ourselves, to know our culture, to understand our history and our country itself. Those are the things that make you realize that you are a Japanese citizen, that make you understand the part you play as a citizen of this country. And the feeling you get from that is love towards your own country. However, those anti-Japan teachers are proclaiming that it's militaristic brainwashing. Those stupid claims are wrong. What are those people doing anyway? They're teaching our children to hate being Japanese. They're the ones brainwashing them with this self-destructive education. They're teaching our children that Japan should be ashamed of itself, and that they should be ashamed of being Japanese. Forget who you are, deny your country. That's what they're teaching them. These innocent children listen and believe such nonsense. Of course they do. They go to school to learn things, right? If their teachers teach them that, of course the children believe it. Can you believe such corruption exists? We must do something about this country's education now, no matter what it takes.
The sound of applause filled the banquet room. All the gentlemen agreed and expressed that they felt the same way by cheering them on. After that, a gentleman wearing a cross slash approached the stage. The hall welcomed him onto the stage with another round of thunderous applause. A rousing theme from a popular drama series played as he took the stage, but is entirely unnecessary before the overwhelming applause. The man's sash carried his name in large letters, along with the name of the prefecture he was running for office in.
Let me introduce you to a patriot, Brian-kun. This man has served the former governor as right-hand man as director of the office of the governor for many years, supporting the prefecture's government for a long time. Since the previous governor has decided to retire, he was appointed as the next governor.
Unfortunately, we had those anti-Japanese teachers in our prefecture. While they proclaim freedom of education and freedom of thought, they're shamelessly forcing an anti-Japan education down on our children. They don't teach real history. They teach our children that everything was Japan's fault. They don't even mention the true purpose of the Greater East Asia prosperity sphere, or all those who fought to save Asian peoples from Western control. They don't even talk about how many Asian countries were actually Western colonies before Japan stood up for our freedom during the war. Our country has recovered amazingly since then, yet our children don't know any of that, because those teachers don't teach them. How truly, truly sad. I can't stand the fact that those anti-Japan teachers are actually teaching our children alongside those teachers who take teaching seriously. They're insulting our educational institutions. I will become a governor and get rid of those teachers. I will straighten out our education system and make sure our children will grow up to be decent young people who can carry on Japan's future.
Kun announces it candidacy for the next year's prefecture governorship. We appreciate your support for him.
I promise I will straighten out Japan's education system. Thank you for your support. Again, the banquet room filled with applause. The man was receiving a standing ovation. I need to explain a bit about this banquet before you misunderstand. It wasn't the conference of a protocol association, nor a lecture by a protocol candidate. It was hard to believe, but this was nothing more than a meeting of a college's alumni association. Oh. Everyone should be familiar with what those are. Whether it's elementary school, junior high school, or college. Once you graduate from one of those, you normally belong to an organization of alumni. You receive invitations for reunions where you enjoy talking about the good old days. However, there are many different types of such organizations. Some are simple, and some are united with much tighter bonds. And once an organization becomes united with those tight bonds, it's no longer a simple organization of alumni. Rather, it becomes a significant faction known as an alma mater clique. In Japanese society, it's traditional for graduates to form tighter bonds that go beyond the level of an organization. Also, the more superior the alma mater is that when, I feel like that's when, since alumni is, the stronger that tendency holds true. The Imperial University, one of the best universities in the country, is famous for the deep bonds its graduates form. Why do superior people like to bond? It may be because they take pride in being superior, but more than that, maintaining connections is the most significant reason. All Imperial University graduates are elites in their respective fields. They are likely to succeed and become important people. When they do, the unity of their alumni association gains immeasurable meaning. In fact, even today, the Imperial University graduates maintain their tight academic clique, and they hold great influence throughout many different fields. They interact with other universities as well, so the graduates' bonds are extremely tight even today. Additionally, while Imperial University usually refers to the University of Tokyo, sometimes it's used to mean all 7 major universities in Japan. Really? They are located in Tokyo, Kyoto, Tohoku, Kyushu, God, kill me. Kyushu, Hokkaido, Osaka, and Nagoya. I'm fucking butchering everything. They are all great schools. There happens to be an organization of alumni that includes all of those 7 universities.
The elderly gentlemen in this banquet room were each from one of those organizations. However, not every graduate would get an invitation here automatically. It is a society of select gentlemen. In order to become a member, one must first fulfill several conditions, such as recommendation from an existing member, contribution to the society, possession of status, and so forth, and probably the same ideology. Therefore, all the members are important people from different fields, and obviously the power of this organization is of a political nature. But there's one more very important God damn it. Criterion one has to meet to join. Strong patriotism, a heart that longs to contribute to Japan and its rebirth. As a result, this organization has become extremely nationalistic. Up on the stage, the candidate for the prefectural governorship was still talking passionately. And among those elderly gentlemen in the crowd, Takano can be found. Takano seemed used to this kind of confluence and seemed unsurprised at anything that was said. But at the same time, she looked rather fed up with it. As she was in attendance, she must have been one of their members, which meant she possessed not only extremely excellent academic background, but that the older gentleman here acknowledged her equivalent contributions to the society, and that she possessed strong patriotism. Interesting. However, her academic background was the only qualification she had met to join. She was only able to join as a special case because of her connections. Interesting. She didn't even hold God, that's a hard word. Prejudged ideas like the other members did. So why was she here today? Probably because of the same reason as the man giving a speech up on stage. The man on the stage didn't actually have prejudged ideas. I cannot say that fucking... Look, Japanese and English aren't my first languages. Hell, I don't even think I can speak language. Much like Takano. He only prepared a speech that he knew the guests would like. Gotta give up that face. Politicians only want votes. Yeah, huh? Each and every person has a vote, but appealing to each one of them takes too long. So the most efficient way is to appeal to organizations with a unified idea and a unified will. In other words, this man was giving this speech so he can garner support from those powerful people. The elderly gentlemen in the banquet room will then do their best to support him since he appears to share their ideals. They can offer many different kinds of experticency, support and assistance. Words. To an outrageous degree, I might add. If the day's events continued in the same way, the organization would likely decide to officially support him. It will probably give him a great deal of financial aid. It will assist him in different ways as well. Of course, the man on the stage won't be the only one gaining something. When he wins the election and becomes a governor next year, the organization will welcome the governor as a new member and gain even more political influence. And eventually, the organization will become so powerful that nobody can ignore it. Those of you reading this right now probably get the sense that they're no mere alumni association. You'd be absolutely right. After reaching this level, they were a fine syndicate. Now, they would be a secret society if the group wasn't so open about its activities. Now, I'm sure some of you readers are brushing this off. There's no way such a suspicious organization could exist in Japan. But everything I've explained is entirely true. There are several such influential groups and organizations within our society. You need to understand that they hold powerful political clout and influence over our natural policies. Ain't that the fucking truth? Some are alma mater cliques, like the one I've described above. Others are scientific societies serving different parties. Industrial groups have advisory committees, religious organizations, community service groups, and so forth. So there are right wings and left wings, the hawk and the dove. I won't go listing their specific names here, yet you've probably read them every now and then in your average newspaper. In Japan, the terms for such forces aren't very common. Most of you readers probably think of a suspicious organization wearing white hoods when you hear the phrase secret society and laugh it off. But unfortunately, that's a huge mistake. In America, where there's far more Territorian citizens, there's way more groups like that. Yeah, ain't that the fucking truth? And they possess such vast influence that ignoring them is impossible. So the terms they use for such forces doesn't apply to those on the scale of this syndicate. Sometimes people say that such groups have more power than the White House, and they are referred to as the shadow government. Even here in Japan, we had a shadow government before the war, or a Zaibatsu. After we lost the war, the GHQ dismantled those blocks, but 40 years have passed since then. There's no guarantee our country hasn't given birth to another shadow government, given how good we are at collusion, groundwork, and backroom deals. Mio Takano was, in fact, attending a conference at such a shadow government. Secret societies, eh? Not so secret, huh? It might appear to be a guest house at a huge golf course. There were no golfers in sight, but by appearance, that must be it. But appearances can be deceiving. This wasn't a golf course, but a huge backyard. The guest house was, in fact, a very stylish mansion. Normal people would be surprised to learn that this was a private residence. Damn, this is a fancy-ass mansion. The interior of the building was as lavish as the exterior. There were beautiful carpets on every floor, expensive-looking decorations on the wall, and expensive-looking bottles of alcohol on the shelves. That's the kind of room Takano was in. There was a knock at the door. An old man in a wheelchair and a young woman pushing it entered. As Takano stood up to bow, the old man stopped her by raising his right hand. Kazumi.
久しぶりだの。いつでも遊びに来なさいと言っとるのに。
そのお言葉だけで光栄ですわ、小泉先生。
The old man sat down on the sofa with assistance from the woman. He was very old. His face was covered in wrinkles, and he could hardly do anything on his own. Even so, he still held a great deal of power and influence.
相変わらずお盛んですわね。首筋、口紅がついておりますわよ。
ほっ、それ本当かね。やれやれ、これはお恥ずかしいの。
There was no lipstick on his neck. The woman who was helping him with his wheelchair was too beautiful to be a mere helper, so Takano had suspected something. As it turned out, her guess was correct. Although he was so old that he could die the next day, he wanted to stay sexually active until the very end. My man! Even the Grim Reaper would think that's just absurd. My man!
ミオちゃんもいつの間にかすっかり美人さんに成長したの。いつまでも小さいと思っとったらいつの間にの。
ご冗談を。本当にそう思われていたら、私のお尻を撫でようなんてなさいませんわ。
おい先短い年寄りに触らせても減るもんではないに。
私よりももっと柔らかいお尻を散々撫でておいでのくせに。
Takano and the old man enjoyed a tasteless conversation. They had clearly known each other a long time and were very close. The young woman came back in to serve tea. After she left, the old man started to speak.
しかし、ミオちゃんは本当に立派な子だの。高野くんもこれほど立派に育ってくれて、きっと。
そうであればいいのですが、祖父の偉業には私など足元にも及びません。
高野くんもいろいろと運がなかった。時代にも恵まれんかった。もし何もない時代に研究をしておったなら、あんたに引き継がせることもなく見事研究を完成させておっただろうの。
ですが、そういう時代だったからこそ。 皮肉にも祖父はひなみ沢症候群の存在に気づくことができました。
The world today is in the nuclear era, with America and the Soviet Union glaring at each other over mounds of nuclear stockpiles. It takes nukes to have authority as a major power. Yet we've forever abandoned our nukes thanks to our free anti-nuclear principles. In this age, we are now a nation without nukes. How deplorable.
In the middle of the 20th century, despite rising tensions between East and West, there was a temporary peace known as the Cold War, brought by a balance of nuclear weapons pointing at each other. I guess you could call it a peace. Permanent memberships in the United Nations were monopolized by nations with nuclear arms. They secured their predominance with nuclear weapons, bound the world with nuclear non-proliferational treaties, eternally banning non-nuclear nations from the world stage. For Japan to become a nation that can compete with the world, it must develop nuclear arms or something as powerful. That's what some people believed, at least.
Realistically, Japan will never arm itself with nuclear weapons.
I know. The citizens wouldn't accept it. Even if the government ignored their opinions and armed itself with nuclear weapons, it wouldn't work.
By abandoning nuclear weaponry, Japan gained the deterrent power of the United States. Though some people thought the only way for Japan to become equal to the United States would be to get nuclear arms of their own. But realistically, that was impossible. Even if Japan armed itself with nuclear weapons, that wouldn't automatically let Japan join the great powers. Takano and the old man discussed the balance of nuclear power in the world. Eventually, the sound of the cuckoo, I want to say cuckoo clock. Oh my God, words! Reminded them to return to the main subject at hand. The old man pointed to the attached case that had been sitting next to Takano. Takano nodded once, opened it up, and removed the contents. There were brand new bills packed in it. How much was actually in there? A bundle of brand new million-yen bills is 1 centimeter, so there must have been at least enough to make up 8 digits. Damn. There were also 2 more attached cases by her side. However, neither Takano nor the old man were surprised at all. Takano closed the attached case and bowed.
ありがとうございます、先生。このご恩は忘れません。
金は人生の長い若者が持つべきだの。年寄りがあの世まで持っていくもんじゃない。金はあるだけものを言うが、現金はさらにものを言う。大事に使いなさい。
もちろんですわ。祖父の夢を実現するためだけに使いま
Oh
す。
shit.
高野くんが羨ましいの。良いお孫さんを持たれた。きっとあの世であんたを自慢しているだろうの。
まだ自慢されるようなことは何もしていません。祖父の研究を完成させた時初めて、私は祖父に褒めてもらえる資格が得られるのだと思います。
本当に羨ましい。うちのせがれたちは全然ダメだ。金儲けのことしか頭にない。金は儲けてからが大切なんだ。その儲けた金でお国のために何を貢献できるかが大切なんだ。それこそが今日まで自分を育んでくれたお国へのご恩返しっちゅうもんなんだがの。
たくさんの恋人たちに気前よくおごるのもお国へのご恩返しなんですの。
もちろんだとも。あいつらが買い物をすれば金は巡ってお国に戻る。金は天下の回り物だ。
However, those lovers would probably end up buying some foreign goods. Things probably don't work quite the way this old man thinks they do. Takano chuckled to herself.
だが女どもにばらまく金とミオちゃんに託す金は意味が全く違う。
存じております。
みおちゃんは今日までよく頑張ってきた。礼を尽くし、大勢の人たちの信用と支持を取り付けた。今だから話すが、春山くんも望月くんも最初は君のことを若すぎると批判的だったんだがね。だから私もみおちゃんのその努力を認めて、その金を託すんだ。はい。そしてな、その金を私が託す。私がみおちゃんを高野くんの研究の正式な後継者だと認めたということなんだ。
Damn.
ありがとうございます。私ごとき若輩に委ねてくださったことに深く感謝いたします。
いやいや、これは高野くんと君の研究だ。彼もみおちゃん以外が引き継ぐことを望まなかっただろうの。だからみおちゃんがここまで上り詰めたおかげで、他の年寄りたちをより説得しやすかったわけだ。
祖父の完成できなかった研究を私が完成させることだけが私ができる祖父への唯一の恩返しですから。そのために求められる努力ならばいといません。
Takano smiled as she remembered everything she had to go through to get to this point. It went without saying, but the old men around Takano saw her as someone from their grandchildren's generation, or maybe even younger. Just how much trouble did Takano have to endure in order to gain the trust of those with such a large generation gap? It was hard to describe to those who couldn't even imagine her trouble. But Takano earned it. She gathered allies, drove away enemies, garnered support, and forced them to recognize her. She spent a long time establishing trust and rising to a status that the old men would welcome, which was all the more a reason this meeting was a reward for her many days of hardship. Now that she officially had a powerful influence backing her, she could spread her wings and see the completion of her grandfather's unfinished research.
さて、高野くんの研究を正式に引き継ぐことになったなら、みおちゃんにも話しておかなきゃならんことがある。
何でしょう、伺います。
The old man paused and pulled an expensive cigarette from the cigarette holder on the table. Takano lit it up for him. She didn't smoke herself, but knowing that the old man did, she kept the lighter in her pocket. The constant build-up of little gestures like that were how she gained the trust she held today.
Takano-kun noticed the Himizawa syndrome in Manchuria, that's Japan.
Yes, according to my grandfather's journal, around 1940, he learned that many soldiers sent from Himizawa to the Tang army expressed terminal symptoms, which led him to surmise that an unknown infectious parasite dwelled in Himizawa.
Under the harsh conditions of war, people sometimes lost their mind. In those conditions, those who were sent off to a faraway battlefield from Hinazawa spent their days under duress, and occasionally they exhibited terminal symptoms, hallucinated, and caused twisted incidents. Yet that all occurred in the extensive chaos of the battlefield. Every incident was handled a separate way, and no one suspected there was an underlying cause.
当時高野君は軍医少佐として海外に派兵されていて、現地の貿易研究所で各種伝染病の予防対策について研究していた。そんな中で偶然いくつかの錯乱事件が全て同じ出身地の兵士によって起こされていることを知った。高野君はひなみ沢出身者に特有の症状ではないかと仮定し、個人的にこの研究を始めたのだ。そしてひなみ沢出身の兵士を研究所勤務にして集め、いろいろと調査した。そしてひなみ沢独特のお社様信仰の存在を知り、得意な性質を持つ未知の疾病の存在を確信したのだ。
Some may wonder how he could be so certain that these symptoms were caused by unusual parasites. At the beginning of the 20th century, German doctors proved that some unknown diseases were caused by bacteria and parasites. At the time, it wasn't too far of a jump to assume that unknown pathogens could be behind unknown diseases. For instance, in modern times, it's been revealed that Burberry is caused by vitamin B1 deficiency. But at the start of the 20th century, many loudly proclaimed that it was the work of an unidentified pathogen.
祖父はその研究が軍にとって価値のあるものになるのではないかと予想し予算を求めましたが一生に付されたとか。
As a researcher, her grandfather was very talented and passionate, but when it came to gaining the aid of political powers, he simply struck out. Himizawa's syndrome. No, the possible existence of a parasite that infected the human brain and controlled emotions. Even though he made the remarkable achievement of discovering a mystery no one had explained before him, he was unable to convince others of that achievement and spent his life alone, unable to garner support and unable to achieve proper recognition for his achievement. Independent research has its limit. Talented people, funding, and backup. A research project can be successful only if all of those things are present. Takano had noticed her grandfather's mistakes, and that was why she did everything she could to obtain all of that.
当時の上層部は即効性でしかも普遍性の高い治療薬を期待していた。
It's very interesting. So the notebook that Takano gave to Lena back in chapter 6 doesn't seem like it was all just made up bullshit that Takano put in there, but like what her grandfather believed, which is very interesting.
高野君の研究は非常に興味深いものではあっても当時の軍には期待されなかったということだの。
ですが先生は唯一祖父の研究に理解を示してくれたと聞いています。祖父は先生のことを無二の親友と記していました。
What I'm wondering right now is that how does pretty much killing everyone in Himizawa prove Takano's grandfather's research? How does it prove that? It's what I'm wondering. How does she get to that point?
高野君とは同郷だった。同じ蕎麦屋を知る人間と遠方の戦地で会えるというのは奇跡的なことだったの。彼とは年は離れていたが私たちは固い友情で結ばれていたのだ。だから高野君からはよく話をされたの。画期的な研究になるに違いない。本格的な研究のために予算をつけられるよう根回ししてほしいと何度も相談を受けた。
祖父の手記にも先生がいろいろと各方面に掛け合ってくださったことが記されています。結局祖父の研究が認められることはありませんでしたが先生だけが理解者でいてくれたことはきっと存命中大きな心の支えになっていたものと思います。
だが結局は何の力にもなれんかった。だから高野君にしてやれなかった協力を美代ちゃんにするんだ。美代ちゃんに協力するのは高野君に対する私の罪滅ぼしでもある。
ありがとうございます。祖父は良い親友に恵まれたと思っています。軍上層部に先生のように理解を示してくれる方が少しでもいてくれたなら祖父の人生はもっと違ったものになっていたかもしれないと思うととても悔しく思います。
The old man closed his eyes and paused for a moment. Shortly after that, he looked into the distance and spoke.
実はな、真実はそうではない。上層部は高野君の発見に少なからず関心を持っていたのだ。
Really?
それは初耳です。でもそれならなぜ祖父の研究を認めなかったのですか？
ある事情により高野君にひなみ沢症候群を研究させたくない都合ができたのだ。
Oh?
その理由は 私と一部の高級将校しか知らん。
Something came up?
私を除き全員が他界した今、高野君の後を継ぐ美代ちゃんには話しておこうと思う。
研究させたくない都合とは何ですか？
Takano had believed until this day that her grandfather's research was ridiculed by everyone, which was the reason why it had never gained any recognition. Her grandfather had asked the military for funding so he could uncover the secret of Himizawa syndrome during the war. But just like the old man had said earlier, the military wanted an instant-acting weapon. That was why they weren't interested in this research. That's what she had believed. But as it turned out, the military had actually shown an interest after all.
Before I go on, I need to explain about the Kuantong army in Manchuria at the time.
Well, the Kuantong army, I'm so fucking butchering this. Well, the Kuantong army was stationed in Manchuria.
Opinions were divided on whether to advance their forces north or south.
At the time, Japan had troops in Manchuria, but opinions were divided on advancing north to deter the Soviet Union or advancing south to expand our territory and secure resources. With the Soviet Union and its predecessor Russia being a landlocked, frozen nation, they had long yearned for an ice-free port that wouldn't freeze over in winter. They had made numerous attempts to expand their territory southward too. Those expansionistic policies were said to be the cause of the Russo-Japanese War. I think I've heard of this a little bit, not much. In the history books, it said that Japan won the Russo-Japanese War, but it was actually a draw ending in peace signed at the Treaty of Portsmouth. Both sides had simply set aside their spears after mutually exhausting their forces. It wasn't like Russia capitulated and offered a complete surrender. As a result, the perception of the Russian threat continued to smolder. Later, the Russian Empire was overthrown by a revolution, but Japan was unable to shake the threat that the new Soviet Union would advance south. According to the history books, Japan went south. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and abandoned the northern advance. As a result, when the Great Patriotic War began, the Soviet Union was able to respond to pressure on their German front by pouring in their eastern forces. Though the Germans had managed to lay siege to Moscow, the Soviets launched a massive counteroffensive that reserved the tides of war. Even with the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact, the Soviets couldn't tell if Japan would attack them at some point. Because of that threat, the Soviets had to leave some forces in the Far East, and they weren't able to devote enough troops to the German front. For starters, the Soviets had forged the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact too. Yet Germany broke the treaty and attacked the Soviet Union. To make matters worse, Japan and Germany had forged a military alliance. With all those factors in play, the Soviets naturally couldn't trust Japan to uphold their neutrality pact. Ironically, the Soviet Union was the one who broke the pact, but I won't go into that now.
Exactly. Hitler signed the Tripartite Pact because he expected Japan to keep the Soviets' other front in check. But ultimately, Japan abandoned the North. With the superior German offensive, many supported the idea of waiting and watching it play out. They believed that even if we did advance north, it would be after Germany conquered Moscow. However, their plan was exposed to Soge, and the Soviets transferred their heavy tanks from their far east border to the German front. That secured Germany's defeat at Moscow, and the Germans began seeking a string of defeats, starting with the Battle of Kursk.
It was a turning point in history, huh?
During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was recognized as a global power, but at least in 1940, the Kuantong army didn't think it was a particular threat. Japan had earned a victory with the Russo-Japanese War, but they took after the new Soviet Union government widely, assuming it wouldn't be stable after overthrowing the Russian Empire. That underestimation was corrected at the Norman Han incident in 1941. After several fierce short-term battles with the Soviet Union's advanced mechanized corps that led to great losses, the Kutang army realized that they shouldn't fight the Soviets and that inclined Japan toward the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact.
But at the very least, up until the Nohan incident, the Kutang army was strongly conscious of the Soviets and divided on advancing north or south. Thanks to that, there were also voices advising caution, suggesting we avoid an all-out war with China in order to shove our forces against the Soviets.
But the Sino-Japanese War broke out after the Marco Polo Bridge incident, right?
July 1947. God damn, I didn't know I was getting a lesson in like fucking Japanese like war politics. But it's interesting. It's very interesting. July 1937. The Japanese and Chinese armies were staring at each other across the Wugao Bridge in Beijing. It was the middle of the night on July 7th. The Chinese army fired on the Japanese army in training and they engaged in combat. This triggered the long Sino-Japanese War.
Yes, according to historical records, that incident triggered the Sino-Japanese War, but with opinions divided over advancing north or south, the army was equally divided over a full-scale confrontation with China. No, in fact, we even received orders from General Staff Headquarters to resolve the matter quietly before the incident grew much bigger.
So those supporting the Northern advance wanted to settle the Battle of Wugao Bridge quietly, insisting that conflict with China was pointless in light of their anti-Soviet strategy. However, those on the mainland supporting the Southern advance used this incident as cause to dispatch more troops to China. They enacted hard policies against China, and thus the Marco Polo Bridge incident became the trigger for Japan and China to enter all-out war. After that, in their bitter struggles in the Norm-Han incident, Japan greatly revised their Soviet strategy. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and secured the route for their southern advance. The Sino-Japanese War got worse and worse.
If the Marco Polo Bridge incident hadn't happened, it's possible that history would have gone very differently. Maybe we would have ended up in war with them anyway. However, if the South faction didn't get that chance, the military authorities would have kept restraining the Soviet Union, and the Soviets would have had to divide the forces between East and West. And maybe Germany could have invaded Moscow. Then Japan could have gone to Serbia. The map could have been very different today.
Germany wouldn't necessarily have won the war if it had succeeded in taking Moscow. England was keeping its strength on the other side of Dover Strait, after all, and the United States was poised to enter the conflict. Besides, Napoleon once occupied Moscow, but in the end he couldn't beat their winter and had to withdraw.
It is one of those ifs, huh? The Axis might have won the war.
Yes, it's possible that the gunshot from the Marco Polo Bridge incident changed the tide of history.
Both sides had different opinions of who fired the shot, right?
According to the Japanese side, a Chinese soldier fired a shot at the Japanese soldier who got too close to the Chinese camp. However, the Chinese side claimed that the shot was a conspiracy invented by the Japanese military.
But the shot was fired. Even though nobody knew who actually pulled the trigger, it sparked the Sino-Japanese War.
Yes, that's what the history books say.
But Kazumi-sensei, what does that have to do with my grandfather?
In the Marco Polo Bridge incident, a shot was fired at a unit that was training in the middle of the night. Everyone was summoned for a roll call. They were missing one soldier. The soldier came back later and it was said that he was sent as a messenger and got too close to the Chinese camp. By the way, did you know that soldier was from Himizawa? Ooh.
Eh? Really?
When Takano-kun was talking about Himizawa syndrome, he said that soldiers from Himizawa could suddenly fall into a deranged state. And we realized that the soldier from the Marco Polo Bridge incident was in fact from Himizawa.
Then what about the first shot fired?
I don't know the truth, and I think it's possible that a soldier within the terminal stages of Himizawa syndrome fired the shot. That soldier was killed in the incident. Since there was no record of it, nobody knows exactly how he died.
The Japanese side claimed that the Chinese army had fired at them and negotiated with that in mind. Just a scant few days after the incident, Japan demanded an apology from the Chinese, and as a show of force dispatched 3 divisions of reinforcements. The Chinese side was of course opposed to that. The situation escalated at once.
If research into Himizawa syndrome continued, the higher-ups thought it would negatively influence the Japanese army's claims. So in order to avoid the risk of traversing that political gray zone, they rejected Takano-kun's research.
そのためこの時代になってもなお祖父の研究が顧みられることがなかったと。
Damn, ain't that something.
そうだ。
The war is over now. There are still some conflicts there regarding historical recognition.
高野君にその気はなくとも、ひなみ沢症候群の研究が公になれば、社会的な影響が強すぎて、一般大衆に不要の混乱と疑念を与えることにもなりかねない。
Shit.
そう危惧した重鎮たちが、今日に至るまで高野君の研究を黙殺するよう根回しをしておったのは、今だから言える話だ。私も高野君に協力しないよう長く釘を刺されておった。
Takano tried to remain calm, but she couldn't stop herself from grimacing. She had just found out the real reason why her grandfather's research had been ignored. It was because of secret maneuvers by political masterminds. If those masterminds feared it so much, ironically, that meant they acknowledged the importance of his research. Takano was saddened and frustrated to no end by her grandfather's one-way life.
だがそういう連中は高いし、もう当時を知る者は私しかおらん。もし今まだ高野君が生きていたなら、私はそれを誤って全面的な協力を申し出るつもりだった。だが彼はもういない。だから私はミオちゃんに謝り、高野君にするはずだった協力を君にしようと思っているのだ。
よろしいのですか。私がひなみ沢症候群の研究をすることで蒸し返しになるということはありませんか。
もう当時とは時代が違う。それにひなみ沢症候群の研究には単なる風土病では済まされないものが潜んでおる。研究によっては医学の名前がつくあらゆる学会がひっくり返るような大発見になるかもしれん。
当時とはもう風向きが変わったということですわね。
そうだ。不幸にも高野君は風向きが変わるまで存命することができなかった。だが幸いミオちゃんという後継者に研究を託せた。
So what makes Takano change her mind? Instead of the Tokyo group harnessing the power of the syndrome, she instead released its horrors on the populace of Japan.
だから私はこの命ある限りミオちゃんの研究を最大限応援する。私は高野君に協力を約束したのに、その償いを命ある限りしていこうと思っている。それが高野君が無二の親友と呼んでくれた私のこの世に残された最後の仕事だと思っとる。
先生、本当にありがとうございます。
いや、いい。私も死ぬ前に洗いざらいを話せてすっきりした。とにかく私の目が黒いうちはミオちゃんの研究に一切の不自由はさせん。何かあったらいつでも頼りなさい。助力は惜しまないからの。
Takano couldn't even imagine what kind of bond this old man and her grandfather had between them. But thanks to that bond, Takano was able to gain a powerful supporter. Tears welled up in Takano's eyes as she gave him an emotional look, but in her mind she was practically dancing at the promise of the old man's full support. The old man and Takano both bowed at the same time to show each other their appreciation. Once that was done, the old man became a little more serious. After that far too lengthy preamble, he finally said what he really wanted to tell her.
そういうことだ。私が言いたいのはつまり、ひなみ沢症候群には歴史すらも作りかねない魔力が宿っているということだ。それは日本社会すらもねじ曲げかねない。そこのところをよく肝に銘じて慎重に研究をしなさい。
After the proprietor finished serving the food, she bowed and left. The room was very tastefully put together, reminding them of a tea ceremony room. While it was sparsely decorated, quite a bit of money had obviously gone into it. No kidding. This was a very famous Japanese restaurant where many high-up officials and other important people had held secret meetings. Takano was there, accompanied by about 5 gentlemen. She was sitting slightly further away from the men. They were clearly in a much more important position than she was. One of the men, wearing an expensive double-breasted suit, told Takano not to be so nervous.
どうぞお楽に、高野さん。今回の件、非常に興味深く読ませていただきました。このような研究が数十年にわたり眠り続けてきたとは。
驚きです。過去に行われていたこの類の研究はほとんどが実らず、スタッフも解散となって何も残っていないと思っておりましたよ。
Nothing was left after the U.S. military confiscated even the fundamental research.
この研究は上層部にもほとんど相手にされなかったと聞いております。
なるほど。故に誰にも知られず、そして誰の追求も受けなかったというわけですな。その意味においてだけは本当に幸運でした。
高野先生の研究を高野さんが引き継ぐとは面白い。これも因縁ですかな。まるであなたの体を借りて個人が研究を完成させようとしているかのようです。
本当にそうかもしれませんわね。私も奇妙な因縁を感じます。
Takano adored Takano Hifumi and called him grandfather, but she hadn't revealed that relationship to others. She realized it wouldn't be beneficial for people to think she was involving personal feelings in her continuing Dr. Takano's research. So publicly, she had once had exchanges with Takano Hifumi, and after his death discovered his research documents with his remains, and chose to carry it on. At least, that's how the story went.
それで先生方、いかがでしょうか。
いくつかの省庁がね、非常に強い関心を持ったよ。中川君が言うには、防衛庁の技術研究本部が強い関心を示してくれてね、研究のスポンサーを名乗り出てくれた。
おお、それは朗報じゃないですか。おめでとう、高野さん。
ありがとうございます。
なんでも向こうが言うにはね。
There's a research council for next generation deterrence being led by experts from several different ministries.
この中でアルファベットプロジェクトというのがあるらしい。高野さんはご存知ですかな？
There was no way she would know about something like that. Though it was very possible for these nationalists to research something dangerous without citizens knowing about it. Society formed something like a web made of connections between people. People hold hands with other people who share these same ideas and end up knitting the net. Of course, some nets are well known, but there are some secret ones too. So there was no way of guessing just how the men at this meeting were connected. A society involving research into deterrent weapons for the next generation, the Alphabet Project, With those words, it was possible to imagine what that might entail. Deterrent weapons. That usually refers to nuclear technology. Weapons are normally used to destroy enemies. However, the general idea of deterrent weapons is very different. The assumption is that they won't actually be used against anyone. Nuclear weapons are widely used as a threat to prevent enemy invasion. Both the US and Soviets possess large stockpiles of nuclear arms, keeping each other in check. But they will never actually use them. Because if they did, there will be a nuclear war and both countries would be destroyed. So they're like a legendary weapon you never draw. Of course, that last resort only works because both sides have nuclear weapons. If one side lacks them, then they lose all military negotiation power. In other words, nations without nukes are powerless before nuclear armed states. That can't be true. Japan abandoned nukes and still functions as a nation today. Or so some people may be thinking, but they're wrong. Japan abandoned nukes, but lies under nuclear umbrella by allying itself with America. That means the nation functions thanks to America's nukes. However, that also means we must resign ourselves to forever being a vassal of America. In order for Japan to escape that and become a powerful nation equal to America, it must possess its own deterrence, arms, and step out of that nuclear umbrella. That society must have been put together by experts who believe in that ideal. Given that, even the name Alphabet Project makes sense. Nuclear weapons are weapons of mass destruction. However, weapons of mass destruction aren't always nuclear. They also include biological weapons and chemical weapons. Atomic, biological, chemical. The initials of these three would make up ABC. That's why weapons of mass destruction are sometimes called ABC weapons. I won't go into weapons of mass destruction that don't belong to those three categories. ABC, alphabet. In other words, Alphabet Project must be a code for research into weapons of mass destruction. As it happened, this guess of Takano's was correct.
By rights, Japan should possess nuclear arms. We establish ourselves as a peace-loving nation after the war, and after our vast international contributions, we've been recognized as a permanent member of the UN. Yet until we possess nuclear arms, we won't be recognized as a proper nation. That is the long-held desire of post-war Japan.
Exactly. However, realistically, thanks to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the major nations hold a monopoly on nukes. Worst, our domestic public opinion is growing allergic to nukes, so foreign domestic pressures make implementing them impossible.
Biological and chemical weapons are sometimes known as the poor man's nuke. Small countries that can't own nuclear weapons have already started research into that kind of weaponry.
Takano-san, please don't misunderstand us, okay? The purpose of our research isn't to obtain a biological weapon. Instead, our goal is to prevent such weapons from coming into Japan from other countries. So this is research into self-defense. I want you to understand that.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Takano hated this Japanese tendency to make excuses, but she didn't let it show on her face. No matter what they said, they already saw the value in using this research towards biological weaponry. We aren't going to use it, it's just self-defense. However, in truth, that was just an excuse as well. If they actually wanted to research biological weapons, then it would be much faster to research diseases like smallpox and anthrax instead of an unidentified disease like Himizawa syndrome. So it wasn't actually correct to say the defense agency was interested in as a biological weapon. In other words, Takano needed a powerful sponsor who could back her up with funding, personnel, and a facility to conduct her research. So she used her connections and turned to the old men behind the government and economy. Reaching out to each of them and getting them to forcefully pull funding out of the defense agency under the excuse of its application towards biological weaponry, that was the truth. Therefore, her project wasn't officially recognized by the defense agency. To be exact, the people who secretly controlled the defense agency were the ones who knew about it. Those masterminds divided funding from the defense agency to the Alphabet Project. And then they pushed for Takano's research to be a part of it. Takano gets her funding, and the influencers get to drain public funds through kickbacks. Considering that, it was doubtful this project was generally about researching the next generation of deterrence arms. It was probably just an excuse for the masterminds to funnel money into their own pockets. Yeah. Well, those complicated matters didn't matter to Takano. Whatever those old men and influencers were planning wasn't her business. And as long as she could get the funding for her research, that was enough. Either way, Takano had found her sponsor. It was one of the biggest organizations around too. This had always been her grandfather's dream. Takano was trying to stay calm, but she was about to jump up and down in excitement.
中川君としては今回の件十分に研究が進んだら丸ごと買い取って構わないと言ってくれてる。まだまだ未完の研究だが、その将来性については十分に理解できてるようだ。
おっしゃる通りです。この研究はまだ道半ばで、十分な資金と施設、人材が欠かせません。
それでだね。ここからが交渉になるんだが、向こうとしてはこの研究丸ごと抱えてしまいたいのが希望らしいんだ。こう言っちゃ悪いんだが、君一人に任せるには荷が重いと考えてる。
Hearing that put quite a damper in Takano's ecstasy.
私はお金が欲しくて研究しているのではありません。一人の研究者としての知的探求心からです。私に必要なのはスポンサー。先方が求めるのは成果。そういう関係に期待したかったのですが。
Takano realized she was talking rather a breathless way, so she tried to calm herself down. Either way, they'd be backing up the research. Considering they're hoping for results that merit the budget, they probably feel that Takano is still too young to handle it.
分かってます分かってます。高野さんが今日まで積み上げてきた研究を横からかっさらわれたんじゃ、それはあんまりですからね。そこは私もよく分かってます。もちろん向こうにもそれは伝えました。それで出てきた折衷案がこれです。まずアルファベットプロジェクト内の新規事業として高野さんの研究を立ち上げます。理事会の承認を経れば正式に予算をつけることができますからね。高野さんには客員という形でプロジェクトに参加していただき、研究に携わるという形になります。
Oh, okay. If she wanted their funding, she'd have to fall under their authority, of course. So far, she had no objections.
ただ、研究会は今回の研究に予算をつけるにあたり、いくつかの条件を挙げています。
And I guess this explain why Ira is the supposed head of it.
一つは、先ほど先生が申し上げたこの度の研究に関する分野で優秀な才能を持つ人物に研究筆頭を委ねることです。
お言葉を返すようですが、私以上にこの研究に詳しい人物が高野先生を除いて存在するとお思いですか？
まあ、そこは高野さん抑えて。お気持ちはごもっともです。
それではその人物に私が研究を売り渡すのと何も変わらないではありませんか。全く話が違います。
落ち着きなさい、高野さん。
Those cunning old men didn't miss sight of the faint weak of anger that crossed Takano's expression. They gave evasive laughs as if remarking how immature she still was if she let her emotions show over such a little thing. However, they weren't laughing to look down on Takano. On the contrary, they were trying to tell her to wait until the end.
もちろんそこはあなたのやりやすいように手を打ちます。小泉先生からあなたをよろしく頼むと念を押されているんです。大恩ある小泉先生に託されたあなたを大丈夫です。ここは一つ私に任せてください。あなたもそして連中も納得するうまい妥結点を用意します。
と申しますと、
その人物の人選は私が握っているということですよ。
Everyone chortled except Takano. After a moment, she joined in. In other words, he meant that he would find just the right person. The defense agency had suggested finding an expert to lead the project because they didn't feel comfortable with just Takano. However, Takano's sponsor was the one tasked to find such a person. In that moment, Takano realized it. Ah, how wonderful it is to have such a powerful backer.
万事私に任せてください。あなたがやりやすい候補者をこちらで探します。高野さんはその中から組みやすいと思う相手を選べばいいということです。
Takano felt better after hearing that. Well, she wouldn't be the official head of the project. She would end up reading it from the shadows. Getting a public face, huh? Of course, she wasn't an expert per se. Having a partner would actually be beneficial.
この件、しばらく先方と私の方で調整します。もちろん、高野さんの満足のいく形で決着できるようにしますので、しばらく朗報を待ってください。
はい。お世話になりますが、どうかよろしくお願いいたします。
そうだそうだ。防衛庁の話だけじゃないよ。厚生省の永田君も一枚噛んでくれるそうだよ。国立感染症予防研究所の伊藤君を紹介してくれてね。機材や技術についてのバックアップを名乗り出てくれてる。
本当ですか？ありがとうございます。
もうこれは立派な国家プロジェクトですな。おめでとう高野さん。これも今日までのあなたと、そして高野先生の地道な研究が評価された結果です。
National project, huh? All the more reason to cover it up.
いえ、すべて高野先生の努力の成果です。私などまだ何も。
謙虚なのは実にいいことです。小泉先生もおっしゃっておられましたが、本当に高野さんはいい方ですな。可愛がられているというのもうなずけます。
それでですね、向こうとしては高野さんの身分を防衛庁で預かってしまいたいようです。幸い高野さんは医師免許をお持ちですからね。研究本部の遺憾として身分を保証するようです。
公務員になれということですか？これは意外な話ですね。
アルファベットプロジェクトに携わる研究機関のほとんどは公的機関です。今回の研究は陸自も強い関心を寄せており、職員を陸自から派遣したいと強く要望してきています。
Yeah, huh?
ですので、場合によっては身分は陸自の扱いになるかもしれません。
まあ、この辺は役人の縄張り争いだと思ってください。
Man, it's so weird that this is still Higurashi. It feels like an entirely different game of, political drama.
その役人たちの上に立つには役人の身分が必要になってくると、そういうわけですね。もちろんどういう形になろうとも高野さんが不快に思うようなことにはしませんから安心してください。
わかりました。そのあたりはお任せいたします。しかし高野先生がかつて軍にこの研究の援助を求めた時には断られたことを思うと、防衛庁が興味を示されたのが意外というか遅いというか複雑な気持ちですね。
それは仕方ありますまいな。
With the war situation worsening, the Japanese military sought something with immediate effect, something that could turn the war around.
決して高野先生の研究を見下していたわけではないはずです。
That wasn't true, of course. Takano already heard that confession from the old man. She exhaled. To her, it was like the meeting in front of her was happening somewhere far away. She had longed for this day to come, worked so hard to reach it. Finally, her grandfather and his research were attaining recognition. This was the day she had dreamed of. So she was fine just imagining that it might be an actual dream. True joy can't be felt all at once. Oftentimes, it's a delayed reaction. Takano thought that must be exactly what she was feeling.
すると思います。多分左官クラスの階級が与えられるのではないでしょうか。となると 高野さんは副隊長の地位になりますから、おそらく3差ではないかと。
Which is why they call her Major.
これは素晴らしい。高野三叉ですか。いやいや、羨ましいですな。男に生まれたからには一度くらいは自分のことを階級で呼ばれてみたいものですが。いや高野三叉ですか。
三叉何ですか？
ああ、自衛隊の階級のことで三等陸佐のことです。企業でいうところの副部長くらいでしょうね。おそらくその階級がプロジェクト発足時に高野さんに与えられることになるかと思います。
昔でいうところの少佐ですよ。そういえば奇遇ですな。高野先生もかつては少佐の階級にあられたそうではありませんか。
Takano remembered suddenly. They were white. Her grandfather had been a lieutenant commander in the Japanese military. Everything she had done until today was so she could continue her grandfather's research. Now everything had fallen into place. She had even been granted the same rank as her grandfather. She had always believed that succeeding his research would be proof that they had a bond tighter than blood, and now she would even be the same rank as him. This is fate, Takano thought. Maybe this is even a message from Grandpa. Yes, it must have been a shout of encouragement from heaven. It was proof that she inherited not only his research but his will as well. Takano couldn't help but feel his sense of destiny from attending the rank of major.
おじいちゃん、私ようやくここまで来たよ。
Nobody else could hear her say that, but her grandfather in heaven could. That's what Takano believed. She had only come so far. There were still a lot of things to do for this research to be recognized as a great work. Otherwise, her grandfather won't become a god. She wouldn't become one either. You must become a god. That was in her grandfather's will. I wasn't able to do so. That line preceded it. It was her grandfather's dying wish. Her grandfather entrusted it to her. All of his research. A god can't be physically brought back to life. A god is made in the hearts of the people who remain alive. Her grandfather will live on in her heart. His exploits will be known to many, and all the scholars will fight to read his documents, to steal them from each other. And they will learn about Hifumi Takano, who began his research during the war. They will know that nobody understood him, and that he ended up devoting his lonely life to his research. And finally, they will extort his grand achievement. Now, what I'm curious about, what changes Takano? Because it seems like all she wants to do is just to continue her grandfather's research by this point. It's not like she wants to, unleash the syndrome upon the populace. Weight of history got one step closer. That's the biggest question right now. What changes Takano to become this? She still has the whole, wanting to become God sort of thing, but it isn't as extreme as we saw at the end of last episode. She still is wanting just to continue his research. So the question is, what changes her so drastically, into murdering an entire village for the sake of this research? Because she doesn't seem that extreme. She seems more tempered, really, more than anything else. And hell, she doesn't even have that whole occult thing, as we, well, at least from what we could see, that whole occult obsession we see her have. This is making me very interested in now Takano, because this is a very different Takano than we've seen before. I'm very interested. Yeah. But if you guys enjoyed this type of content, hit that subscribe button. If you liked it, hit the like button. Want to tell me something? Put it down in the comments below. Want to check out the Discord server we're on, or my Twitter? Check the description below. And yeah, this has been Voidlego. I'll see you guys next time. See ya!